Have you heard about Anchor? Well, it's one of the easiest ways to create a podcast. Not only is it 100% free, but it has a variety of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or a computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast to other sites such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others for you. And Anchor even allows you to make money from your podcast without a required minimum listenership. So whether you've been in the podcasting game for a long time or you're completely new to it, Anchor is so user-friendly that it's basically your one-stop shop for making a podcast. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. You're listening to First Fossil. Because sometimes you simply need someone to help you take that first fossil. Hello and welcome to First Fossil, a show where we learn together how to take that first fossil toward becoming the best versions of ourselves. My name is Candace Olushala, and today's special guest is an author, blogger, certified life coach, and speaker who specializes in confidence and empowerment for women. She's written a best-selling devotional called She Exudes, a confidence awakening devotional and journal. So without further ado, please welcome Alicia Renee. Hi, Alicia. How are you doing?
Hello, I am great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I love the way you said she exudes.
Girl, exude all day. Okay.
Yes.
She exudes. It's one of my favorite words. I just love that word. It's so all
Great.
encompassing. I love it. Such a great, powerful title of a
It
of a
is. Thank
devotional.
you.
Oh my
It
goodness.
is.
How have you been? I've been asking my guests since I had launched during 2020. I keep asking my guests, how have you been? Just, getting out of 2020. Now we're in 2022. Like 2020 was like 5 years long, plus
Yes,
tagging on 2021.
definitely.
It was extra. So just making sure you're doing okay.
I am doing great. Actually, 2020 was a doozy for me. It was long. There were so many different transitions involved in my personal life. But now we're in 2022. Still doesn't feel like we're quite back to normal. But what is normal anymore? I think we're coming into a new normal. So I'm
That's
just
it.
happy to be here and happy that I can get out of the house from time to time.
Girl, just breathing real air. Hallelujah.
Yes.
I'm telling you. Yes. Oh my goodness. So funny. I went to the grocery store today and I've been really like just Instacart me because I don't people just be breathing all over you at the
Yes,
store
yes.
and I'm not
Touching
here for that.
everything.
Touching everything. Girl. So I was like, okay, I only have like 6 things I need to buy and it's not enough to have to Instacart that. So I'm gonna run in,
Mhm.
grab the things, get out. And I was just reminded as to why. I don't want to go in
Yes.
there. I don't want to do
Yes.
it.
Yes. We still have the mask mandate in our state, and I love it because I don't want people breathing all over me and sneezing and coughing. Just keep your germs to yourself.
Yes, yes. I know. We talked about sharing is caring, but there are limits to
Yes, there
that.
definitely are.
So all of some people want
Some
to
of the things
share.
we've learned.
Yes. Girl, oh my word. Well, I'm glad you're doing great. I'm glad you're doing
Sam, thank you.
fantastic. So why don't you go ahead and tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am Alicia Renee. I am an author, a certified life coach specializing in confidence and empowerment for women. I'm also a blogger and a speaker, and I really just help women get unstuck, so helping them to push through with life despite all the obstacles that may come their way, and I do that by using a mixture of faith and practicality. So,
Mm.
just all of those things to help them to break through and live their best lives.
I resonate with this. I love that. You don't hear a lot of life coaches talking about how they implement faith too. So that I actually appreciate that because it's
Yes.
a huge part of my life coaching as well.
It's a
So I
huge
think
part of
that's
my
great.
life as well. So it's like I can't ignore that part because I wouldn't be here without it.
Yep, exactly, exactly. I support that completely. So,
Mhm,
okay, so you do all these things. You're an author, you're life coaching.
mhm,
There's so much that you encompass, but
mhm.
with all of those things, what for you do you then consider a impactful first Basel experience?
Well, I was just kind of looking at your five H's, and I would
Mm,
say my first pasto definitely had to deal with healing. And
mhm,
because I was able to heal and really take some time to reflect and find out who I was and learn my purpose, then I became all of these things that we're talking about today. So,
yeah,
the life coach, the author, speaker, and the blogger. But before, I was just and I won't say just because it was a big role, but I was a mother. I was married. I went through a divorce in 2020. And prior to that, I had been a victim of some toxic relationships. I have
mm,
a son who is now 14, but at the age of 3, he was diagnosed with autism.
mm,
Thankfully, now he is more higher on the spectrum. So, world of difference compared to where he was when he first got his diagnosis, but nonetheless, was it a struggle? But I would say my first step in becoming who I am today really started at the fourth quarter of 2019, when I decided to separate from my ex husband.
mm.
Mhm.
That's a big decision.
It was a huge decision.
And it was finalized in 2020?
It was finalized in February of 2020. And
Oh.
actually, in part of that transition, I moved about 10 hours away from my home state and hometown in Indiana. I moved to North Carolina, not knowing anyone, just myself and my son. And so we
Mm.
moved in January 2020. In February 2020, my divorce was final. And in March 2020, that's when we had all of the quarantines. And we're like, stay at home.
Literally, I
So
was over here like, "Okay, last quarter of 2019, and
yes,
then you jumped to
yes.
20 and then you're stuck in a house in a place
Oh my
you've never
gosh.
been before." Okay, so okay, I have several questions. Okay, so first off, what brought you to the space where you were content with making the decision to separate from your ex-husband? That's my first
Mhm.
question.
Yes. So I have always been a hopeless romantic and grew up in a church. And so, grew up in a background where you're not going to be able to date for long. You need to, find that someone because, we don't want to fornicate and, commit all these other sins. So it's better to marry. So eventually I found my ex husband and everything was great. He was a very charismatic person and we had definitely some great times and we fell in love pretty quickly. I would say maybe around the time that he proposed to me is when things kind of took a different turn. And I
Mm,
began to see another side of him, a lot of anger, a lot of emotional abuse, but it was just kind of beginning at that time. And I really believe that he suffered from likely a personality disorder because when things
mm,
were great, they were great. When they were not, they were definitely not. So I stayed in that relationship for about 5 years and finally decided that I was not being the person that I felt that I should be or that I used to be. I had an ideal in my mind that I wanted to help women in some sort of way. I had worked actually in a corporate finance, but specifically for a behavioral health unit. And so I got to see people coming in and out, people that look just like you and I that were dealing with different traumas or dealing with just different obstacles in their lives and how that was affecting them. And it's interesting because I also had friends and family members that would go through similar things, maybe dealt with some self esteem issues, dealt with relationship issues, and they would come to me as a pillar of strength and kind of just vent to me, ask for advice. And I was thinking to myself, well, I'm glad I look like I'm strong on the outside, but if you really knew what was going on behind closed doors, you would say something different. But I was able to persevere through all of that. I've always considered myself to be resilient and a leader. I'm just kind of pushing through and doing the things that I wanted to do. But I really didn't know how it would morph into helping people or even writing when I was still going through my own issues and, just feeling really low. My self esteem had hit rock bottom. I really just did not believe in the person that I was seeing. And all I could think about is, but I just want to be married. What's wrong with me? Why wouldn't God give me a better husband, one that would treat me better? What is it that I can do better so that we can, live this lifestyle? We can have the home, the car, travel, and do all those things. And ultimately, I knew that he did love me. He just didn't love me the way that I needed to be loved. So I
Mm.
kept thinking if I did something different, things would change. And so ultimately, I decided that enough was enough because I wasn't being the person that I thought I should be. And people around me began to tell me the same thing. So I obviously prayed about it, went back and forth about it, finally said, I need to move out. So during that time that I moved out, it was August of 2019. I just started to think about all of the things that I wanted to do with my life. And one of those things was move to the Southeast corridor of the US. And for a number of different reasons, just the weather, the opportunities there. And just this was something that I had talked about with my ex. And unfortunately, he didn't make the move with me.
Mm.
So it just so happened that someone contacted me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I got an opportunity in North Carolina. Would you like to go? And I was like, well, sure. Okay. Well, let's see how
Mhm.
this plays out. And I tell you, everything just worked out just superbly. But
Mm.
I was kicking and screaming the whole way. I was thinking, God, seems too good to be true. Sounds great. And I do want to break. I want to change. I think I can do this, but I'm afraid. And so
Mm.
eventually I just said, I'm going to do it afraid until I'm no longer afraid.
Mm.
And God provided all the resources that I needed to actually make the move. And he planted me there right before the quarantines from the COVID quarantine. So I know that had the height of the outbreak had happened before I moved, I probably would not have moved. So the timing was perfect.
Mm.
But in that moment, I started to second guess myself. Why did I do it? Did I make a mistake? What am I going to do? Should I move back? So there were all those thoughts. But deep in my heart, I knew that I had made the right decision. It was just a matter of navigating through to make it perfect.
Wow. Man, I mean, that is so understandable, having to decide, is this serving me well, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Is it serving me well? Is it serving my child well? Is this
Yes.
is this healthy from all angles? Let me assess the different areas of my life and or is this adding to them or is it taking away? And
Exactly.
that's hard. That's hard,
It
especially
is.
I understand the faith background that you're talking about, and for those of you listening that maybe didn't grow up in church, aren't in church, don't really know how or where Christians talk about the need to save yourself before marriage or
Mhm.
try not to quote unquote fornicate. That's a big but biblical term for,
Yes.
trying to keep yourself sexually pure, if you will.
Mhm.
Those things resonate strongly with me as well with my faith background and that idea, especially having grown up in the 90s. I know they were doing it in the 80s a bit too, but there was that purity culture season in church
Mm.
and,
Mhm.
really trying to get kids to save themselves and be pure and
Yes.
purity rings and all that stuff happened. And so that mindset is very it weighs heavily when it comes to settling down and getting married
Yes.
and having a family and how
Mhm.
you are in relationship with someone that you're potentially wanting to join with in holy matrimony, right?
Yes. Mhm.
So it's often very challenging as well to try to explain to people that you checked off all the right boxes, right? That
Mhm.
this should have happened, this should have happened. I did this, I made sure to do this, da, 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 da. And you can still end up in a situation where you realize, oh, this isn't serving me well. And
Yes.
this
Mhm.
is actually harming me more than it is covering me, right?
Mhm.
And you said that you had prayed a lot about it, but
Mhm.
how did you initially feel when the idea of divorce came to your mind or was brought up
Mhm.
between you and your
Mhm.
ex? Was that something that you really wrestled with faith-wise?
Definitely. So for the Christian faith, divorce for the most part is taboo. There are some, ways that, or circumstances where it would be allowable, but it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to experience, having been through some other bad relationships in life and feeling like, oh, this is my opportunity to make things right and, have a great lifestyle for my son and just, have the American dream. So I definitely did wrestle with that
Mhm.
from a faith perspective and also just from a natural societal perspective because I didn't want to look like a failure. Like,
Mm.
why, was it ending pretty quickly after about 2 years? Why was it ending so quickly? And what did you do that you could have prevented or
Mm.
that you could have done better to make the relationship work? So there were all those thoughts. And of course, there was love. I did not hate him at all. I was still in love with him and
Mm.
wanted to make it work. But as you mentioned before, when you start to see that something is not serving you,
Mm.
even though you've checked off all the boxes and it looks like the right thing to do, if your heart doesn't feel it, that's when you really need to not second guess yourself, but really take a deep dive and analysis into what's going on. Because sometimes we can be fooled. Our perception can be a little altered and we just don't we have kind of these blinders on and we just don't see it from every single angle.
Yeah. That reminded me of something that Pastor Jerry Flowers from Redefine TV, he talked about at some point in some of his sermons last year, the year before, where if you're in a situation or in a relationship where your peace leaves when they leave,
Hmm.
or like no, or like when they're close, and then when they leave, the
Mm,
peace returns. So yeah, like that's like a huge sign.
that's a huge sign, definitely.
The
Mhm.
closer they are, the less peace you have in your spirit, the more anxiety
Mm,
is brought about you,
mhm.
and then when they're going, you're like, "Oh, I feel better now."
Yes,
Like,
yes.
that's an issue. Or I would even say the opposite is true if them leaving brings about an unhealthy amount of anxiety,
True.
right? Like, there's
Mhm.
difference between missing you and, like, I I cannot function, I'm going to I'm going to completely fall apart if you're not where I can see you, then
Exactly. Yes.
that's another conversation.
That's another.
So, you know?
But that's an unhealthy balance,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Mhm.
So okay, you made this life-altering decision, the
Mhm.
divorce was finalized, you're in this new
Mhm.
state with your son, and then lockdown happens. And this is your first possible experience. So, like, you're like, "Man, I made this decision. I'm
Mhm.
feel, at peace with this. I've prayed about it. It's good."
Mhm.
And now you're left to be in the home with your son. I would
Mhm.
imagine a lot of reflection and a lot of
Oh,
thinking was going
definitely.
on. So, how was lockdown for you so
Mhm.
close to having made this step?
Mhm. It was, oh my gosh, when I just recall the events, it was rough. But so in March, divorce final in February. In March, the lockdowns take place. And I decided that since I could work remotely at the time, that I would go back to my home state and stay with my parents during that time. And so my son and I did that. And that was a great experience for about a couple of weeks. And then I said, you know what? I think I'm over the parent thing. I love them, but I need my own space. But one reason why I definitely wanted to go back home was because my birthday had came and passed during that time frame. And for
Mm,
one, I couldn't do anything because we're on lockdown. But for
yeah.
two, this was the first birthday in about 5 years that this person wasn't in my life. So
Mhm.
having to grieve and go through that experience in front of my family, it was difficult because I had to keep this stoked face and cry in silence. So after a couple weeks, I said, you know what, I'm gonna go back home. And they were like, "What? You can stay. Things are still shut down." I said, "I know, but I think I just need to go home for a little bit and I'll work from home and just give it a try down there and see how it works." So once I went back home, that's when the self reflection really began to kick in. That's when I had that quiet time, the peace, and I really just started to say, "Lord, whatever you want me to do,
Mm,
how you want me to do it,
yeah.
I am available to do it because I know
Yes.
that you did not bring me here for, you know, for nothing. I know that there's a purpose behind this and that there's a purpose for my life.
Mm,
And I want to see what that is. Can't get
yes.
any worse than what I've been through. So let's just give this a try." So I
Mm,
just began to journal. I began to listen to a lot of inspirational podcasts and just different recordings that really kind of fed to my soul, developed some affirmations, and really just started to reflect. And before I knew it in my journal, I was coming up with material for a book. So I didn't realize at that time that I was actually beginning to write my book. But what I thought was just helping me to get through this process and what felt
mm,
good at the time was the beginning of me finding my purpose.
mm. Wow.
Mhm.
That man, telling you, write it down, make it plain. It might turn into a book
Exactly.
someday.
Yes. Yep. Hmm.
That is so therapeutic, and the fact that you were writing things down in the moment that you were thinking and feeling and processing those things, and just
Hmm.
being able to take this and turn it into something for people to assist them in how they're processing and thinking through their
Hmm.
own situations is really beautiful.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's I when I think about it, and at the time I wasn't thinking this is what I'm doing it for, and then seeing how it all manifested, it's just an awesome experience.
Wow. And how have you seen your experience through the processing and healing journey? How has that affected your son?
You know what? I think it has made him more confident. I think
Mm.
it's made him more flexible,
Mm.
because we have had, various different experiences going back and forth. And I think he was able to cope with COVID a little bit better because,
Yeah.
he's had some back and forth and he's just kind of had to deal with some of the punches and we dealt with it together. So I
Mm.
think it strengthened our relationship. Um, I remember taking him to brunch one day and calling my family and saying, "Hey, I'm on a brunch date. Here's my date," and taking a picture. And it was my son. I said, "You know what? He's a pretty cranky date and he's cheap. He doesn't pay for anything. I would love to be on another date with someone else." But, it's those moments that he and I will remember how we just moved and conquered this city on our own. And now we
Mm.
live here and we have no plans of going back, not now anyway. We really
Yeah.
enjoy where we are now.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love
Hmm.
it. Oh my word. That's just it's nice to hear how free you are. Like you can tell by how you even share your story that you're
Hmm.
walking more in that freedom that you deserve as God's child, and
Hmm.
to know that your divorce doesn't define you,
Yes,
right?
definitely. Hmm.
And I love that your son is soaking in that energy, that freedom energy that you have
Hmm.
for
Yes.
himself. Whether
Yes.
he's like, "Oh, because my mom has made these decisions, now I'm gonna take that." Like, I would assume most kids wouldn't sit down and, like, purposefully extrapolate
Not
that and put it
embrace
into their
it.
life,
Yes.
but it's just they sense it. They can sense when their
Hmm.
parents are feeling
Oh,
or, thinking a
definitely.
certain
Hmm.
way, and with autism, especially autistic children and people are very sensitive to
Yes.
how people are feeling and thinking.
Mhm.
So, I
Mhm.
know for him, that's probably very it's probably very warm in his spirit to be able to be, more
Yes.
flexible and outgoing a little
Yes.
bit, and that's beautiful. And you guys
It
have this
is.
fresh start too.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And just to hear him often brag on me, and I'm not even knowing that he's really paying attention on the things that I've done, but I take them along with me to my events from time to time, and I can hear him bragging on me, and I'm just like, "Okay,
Oh,
I think I did something right
yes,
there."
yes, yes. Yes,
Mhm.
that's gonna stick with him forever 'cause he was on the
Mhm.
front lines of that, so
Yes.
he's already been able to see it, and I think he'll hold that in high esteem for the rest of
Mhm.
his life, I guarantee that.
Yes.
And so now, you're did you get certified as a life coach through this experience as well, so you can impart some of this knowledge on women?
Well, actually, the certification came about a year later, so in 2021. So I
Okay.
had no idea that I would become a life coach in 2020 when I wrote this book. So I began to write the book towards the end of 2020 and realized that, hey, this is turning into a devotional and I'm actually getting something from this. I think other people might get something from this as well. So from there, it started with a business. And so there are other journals and there's an adult coloring book for women that focuses on confidence. So it just kind of morphed into a couple of other things. Of course, speaking opportunities. And then later,
Mm.
I just started thinking, hmm, people are already coming to me for advice and just wanting to know more about my story. And I love helping people. Let me explore this life coaching thing.
Mhm.
And I was really afraid about it because I was like, you know what? I don't have this background educationally. My background is in finance and accounting. And so this is totally different than anything that I've ever done, but it is
Yeah.
definitely my passion and I
Mm,
love it. And I'm so excited to be able to do it full time.
mm.
So, was I planning for that to happen? Absolutely not. it just, it was another chapter to the evolution of what I've been going
I love this, and, uh,
through.
the way that God surprises us too when we're going through those seasons of transition, almost like a rebirth, a renewing, a
Mhm.
rejuvenation of your spirit, and
Mhm.
the way that he surprises you with opportunities to where you get to pay it forward to someone else, the things that you got
Yes.
to go
Mhm.
through. I don't think it's a mistake or just a happenstance that life
Right.
coaching, fell into your lap. It was placed
Mhm.
there, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So so now that you've done all these things and in such a short amount of time, really, it's been 2
Mhm.
years and you've accomplished
Mhm.
so much,
I have.
right? Despite a severing of a relationship, you were
Mhm.
still able to, I mean, write a book and start this life coaching and impact women and do talks. Like you have channeled so much of your healing into a
Mhm.
funnel that has affected women already. And so
Absolutely.
what is your advice for specifically women, but men as well,
Mhm.
people who feel like, man, I'm in this situation where I've severed a tie that I thought would be lasting forever.
Mhm.
And now I feel lost, right? I'm not sure if I can do something right now or if I'm
Mhm.
able to impact anyone with my situation because I'm a mess right now. I'm trying to figure it
Yes.
out.
Mhm.
What is your advice to people in this situation?
Mhm. My advice would be, first of all, don't give up on yourself. If
Mm,
you feel deeply that there is something more for you to do and there's something better, explore that. I would definitely not just cast those thoughts to the wayside and just continue to stay in and ruminate on your current situation. Go out there and find what that better is. And I would definitely say to pray about it. If you believe in a higher power, I believe in God, I am a Christian, get the confirmation that you need before proceeding because sometimes we think we know our path, we think we know what we should do, but in reality, that's not what we are supposed to do. Or it could just be a part of the stepping stone that you need to get to the next level. And you may be thinking, oh, well, I've accomplished this. I'm just going to stay right here. But no, there's opportunity for you to be elevated and to go further. So believe that you can accomplish any dream that you have, that there is something for you to do that's good in this world, that there is a unique purpose, especially just for you, and to not lose hope, not to lose faith about it. You know, having faith is really going beyond just believing that something will work out, but it's actually seeing something that is not in the present and believing and knowing that eventually that thing is going to come to pass and work in your favor. And so, regardless of how the situation looks, regardless of how dark and cloudy your world may be right now, if you believe and you have faith that everything is going to work out and you're going to come out on the other side of all of that, it will eventually come to pass. Just don't give up. Don't lose hope. And anytime you have fear, fear is not of God. That's one thing that I have learned through this whole test
that
is
part.
that God has not given us the spirit of fear. So
Mm,
anytime there's a doubt or there's a spirit of fear that creeps into your mind, you need to instantly just cast that down and think of something in reverse, something positive. And that's easier said than done. You know, sometimes you do have to work at that because we have so many thoughts going through our heads each and every day. And majority of those are going to be negative. But when you really practice and really start to think about, okay, well, I don't feel well today, and I think I look fat in these jeans. Start to think about something positive. Well, currently, I feel a little snug in these jeans, but I know that I'm going to start feeling comfortable because I can lose the weight that I know that I need to. So, speaking that positivity into your life is going to bring about the change eventually. But if you keep thinking negatively, you keep speaking negatively, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to stay in that same place.
Mm, powerful. Spoken like a real life coach, too. I loved that.
Thank you.
Yes. Man, Alicia, thank you so much for taking the time to just unpack your story and share it. It's a
Mhm.
very vulnerable story. So
It
I do
is. Yeah.
not take that lightly, and I appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
How
I
can
appreciate you.
how can people search you on social media, check out your
Mhm.
devotional, and maybe even sign up to be a client of yours as a life coaching
Yes.
client?
So we talked about the devotional, She Exudes, and here is a picture of it. So again, it's She Exudes, a Confidence Awakening devotional and journal. It is available on Amazon under She Exudes and also on my website. My website is www.confidentlily.com. That is my business name, The Confident Lily. If you know anything about the lily flower, it represents rebirth. It's just refreshing. It's a beautiful flower that can grow in many different environments. And so that is what I wanted to embody in the flower form. So the Confident Lily, Lily is spelled Lily. And you can find me at the same name on social media. So Instagram and Facebook at the Confident Lily.
Love it. Guys, go check out her stuff. I truly believe this could be really powerful for those of you guys who take these opportunities. So please go check out her book and her website as well. I just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. If there are any topics that you want discussed here in the future, please DM me those situations. You can post them on social media. You can tag me at Candace Olushala, or you can shoot me a text at 859-800-3396 and let me know, what were your thoughts on this episode? Have you been in this situation before? Are you currently in a situation where you're trying to figure out your current relationships? Please share those with me and Alicia. We would love to hear from you guys. If you want to
Yes.
support any further in the future, you can always go to my website at www.firstbasso.com and you can find a variety of ways to support there. But the best way you can support is like, subscribe, comment, rate, leave a review for this podcast. Everything that you guys share and do for that does benefit my business. So I do thank you guys for doing that. And thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. You guys, please stay safe. Corona, she's not done. Okay. I
She's
don't know.
not gone yet.
I've been telling y'all this for so long. The pharmacist in me keeps telling you, y'all need to get your vaccines if you don't got no vaccine. If you don't want to get a vaccine, please cover your mouth. Just don't breathe on people.
Yes.
Just be
Yes.
courteous. Just be courteous. If anything, please just cover your mouth. Okay. So that's the pharmacist PSA for me. Okay, guys. Otherwise, take care, stay safe, love on each other. And
Yes.
we will talk soon, guys. Alicia, thank you again, and
Thank
we'll
you.
talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.